Hi, this is Renee O'Brien with Sharp Chip Consulting. And the small business tip that I have for you today is about cash flow analysis calculators. The sample cash flow analysis calculator that I have here for you today is just one that's made up an Excel spreadsheet. There's several of them you can find online. I'd be happy to share mine with you. It's just basically an Excel spreadsheet that kind of shows you what's coming into your bank account and what's going out. Now, I know we all have financial tools like QuickBooks and maybe some management software that you use, and you think, why the heck would we need a cash flow analysis calculator? Why would I have to create something new or use something else? It seems like it's duplicate or redundant data. Well, the main reason is, do you have enough money? It's the most important answer. Lots of times as we're growing our business, we don't start out flush with a ton of cash. Or maybe we go through periods of time where we've done really well and then now we're really tight on cash for one reason or another. And it's really important for us to know not only are we profitable, but do we have enough money in our account today for the things that we need to do today? Some of the indications that might tell you, hey, I should really use a cash flow analysis calculator would be, let's say, for example, you're getting hit with a lot of fees from your bank. Your bank is getting a lot of overdrafts. You're making enough money every month, but the timing of everything is, oh, shoot, I didn't realize all those things were coming through, where you've got a lot of things set up on your debit accounts for automatic payments, and they're pulling money out when you don't have money in there, and then you're racking up all these fees. Believe it or not, as a consultant, I've seen lots of small businesses have hundreds of dollars and maybe over $1,000 sometimes in fees just because of the fact that the timing of this money isn't correct. So that may be one reason. You may want to make sure that you have an idea of what's going into your account and out of your account on a daily, weekly, or even monthly basis to make sure that you are always going to have money on the day that you need it and you don't have any fees. Second reason would be you just want more control. A lot of business owners, they're really busy running their business. They're passionate about marketing. They're excited about the service or product that they provide. And maybe finances and bookkeeping is on the lowest part of their list. But yet they do feel a little bit in the dark. Like, how can I get in control of my money? It's the least favorite part of business ownership for a lot of business owners. And so one of the reasons why you might want to use this tool is so that you can get comfortable in a very simplistic form of what money is going into your accounts and what money is going out. Another reason why you might want to use a tool like this would be, let's say, for example, you have a big payment coming up. Let's say, for example, your insurance or your workers' comp, has a big payment once a year, and then they have small monthly payments at other times. You know it's coming. I don't have the $10,000 sitting right there in my account. You know it's coming. You want to make sure you're going to have enough money. That's one thing that you may do. You may be having that set up for. Another would be, let's say you're planning on a long-term absence, or you're just going on vacation, or you're going to be gone for a little bit, and you want to make sure that the people you've left in charge are not going to run into a huge crisis with money. Do I have enough money in there? What happens if sales were a little bit less than what I was expecting? Do I have enough in there? So that might be another reason. One final reason has to do with payroll. One of the confusing parts about business ownership and cash flow management has to do with payroll, because it's not like, in a pure world, we would get revenue today, we would pay our employees today, and then whatever's left over would be profit. But that's not exactly how it works, right? We get revenue for a while, and then we pay employees in lump sums in payroll. And that might be a little bit later, and that might have some taxes tacked onto it, and it's obviously not going to match up day by day by day. So sometimes the bill that we're expecting for payroll is a lot bigger than what we had anticipated. And one of the particular problems that I would focus on the cash flow analysis calculator doing well for you is if you have, let's say, a service business, and you are paying your people on a weekly basis or a biweekly basis. The way it works is that, let's say you're paying your people on a weekly basis and you pay them every Friday. There's 52 weeks in a year. Well, there's 12 months in a year, and if every month was only 4 weeks, meaning there would be only 4 Fridays, then that would mean that we only had 48 weeks in a year, which we don't. So the tricky part of it is that 4 times a year when you pay weekly, you're going to end up having to pay 5 paychecks in the month instead of 4. And yet you still have the revenue from that 1 month that you're counting on sharing amongst all of your expenses. So this is a problem that we want to save money for ahead of time, but sometimes we haven't saved our money ahead of time, and we're not sure, have I saved enough money? Can I make sure that I have enough money for that extra payroll? Biweekly pay is the same way. You're going to pay somebody 26 times a year. if you're on biweekly pay. That means 2 times a year, you're going to pay them 3 times in the month instead of 2 times in the month. Let me give you an example. Here we have a typical calendar, and I'm going to kind of demonstrate for you the biweekly pay and how it kind of affects your cash flow. And then we'll show you how to use it in the tool when we get more into the nitty-gritty. So you can see in a typical month, let's say you're paying every other Friday, okay? Typical month, like here in February, there would be, you get paid on the 14th and you get paid on the 28th. 1 month, 2 paychecks. This example here for this business makes about a little bit more than $47,000 a month in revenue. And they're 2 payrolls together when they're paying their field workers, their management and administration people, and a healthy profit for the owner. Their 2 payrolls together is about $33,811. So obviously $47,000 minus $33,000, that's a lot of extra money. You know, that's great. That should be plenty of money to cover your rent and your insurance and your supplies and all those extra things. That should work out just fine. Well, that goes along just fine, except for 2 times a year. In this case, it would be January and August. You're going to have 1, 2, 3 pays in the month because of the fact that you're paid on Fridays, and there just happens to be 3 Fridays in that month. And the 3 payrolls added up together come out to be $50,717. Now these numbers I'm including the payroll taxes and things like that. But obviously we can see that like in the previous months where we had 2 payrolls, we had plenty of extra money from our $47,000 revenue to pay all our bills. But in this particular month, we have almost $51,000 in payroll expenses, and we're only going to make $47,000. So we're $4,000 shy. We're not going to have enough money. So obviously what we want to do throughout the year is we want to figure out what our cash reserves, what we should be putting aside every single month, so that the 2 times a year that we're going to end up having these extra pays, we will have enough money sitting there in savings. And you can watch my other video about how to calculate exactly how much cash reserves you need. However, that's a perfect world. That's where we want to be. But a lot of times people learn about this. Maybe they learn about it from me, and then they go, oh, well, that's great, but I only learned about it just now, and I have a payroll coming up, or a month where there's 3 payrolls. And so you have to figure out, hey, I don't have my savings, but I got to figure out, do I have enough money, and where's that money going to come from? Okay, so now we've talked a lot about why we might want to use the cash flow analysis calculator. I'm going to show you how to use the cash flow analysis calculator and what parts are important. First, let's kind of describe what we're looking at. We can see right here that we have a starting week. And actually, it says on here, ending of week would be 12/20/2013. So that basically we're talking in this whole section here about everything that's going to happen in the week that ends on 12/20/2013. We can see that we are starting with a balance of $6,500 and that we have an income that we're expecting during this week, say from the 13th through the 20th, of $10,920.32. And then in this section in here is where we're going to list our expenses, and then down here we're going to see what do we have left over, okay? As you're moving along, you can see that this number right here, $514.82 in our sample data, carries over to the next week and says, hey, we're going to carry over, we're going to start off with $514.82, and then in this particular week, we're going to gain another $10,920.32. For the purpose of this example, all of the incomes are the same. But of course, we realize that in our businesses may not be the same. Let's say, well, this looks like this is the week of Christmas. Maybe your business is affected by Christmas. Either you get more sales or you get less. And so then you would affect this income. So when you go to set up your cash flow calculator, whether or not it's this one or any other, it's important to make sure you're starting off with some dates that are accurate so that when you come in and you keep looking at the weeks, you don't start getting confused about what weeks are what. So maybe your calculator comes in with some sample dates. Correct it to be a date that's the end of your week. Like if you tend to finish your week on a Friday and you tend to make all your deposits by then, or maybe you make them daily, but Friday's a good stopping point, then whatever this coming Friday is, you go ahead and put that particular date in there. You're going to start off by checking your bank statement and seeing what is your balance today. What is the exact balance that you're starting off with right now? And then you're going to look and you're going to anticipate between now and Friday, how much income am I expecting to be added to that bank account? And you would enter that right in here. Okay, so we start off with the balance of whatever today is. So let's say today is a Wednesday, okay, and we're expecting that the end of the week is a Friday. And so let's say the balance today in the account is $6,500, and we are still expecting, you know, let's say, for example, we were going to only have 2 days worth of 2 days worth of income in there, more like $5,000, because most of the work in this business is later in the week, in this sample business, for example. That's what we would do, is you would go ahead and adjust that. So that's how you would go ahead and set that up. Then you're going to get down here to the expense section. I went ahead and erased that because I want to make sure that I have some data in here for the examples I want to show you later. But then in the expense section, you're going to go ahead and add your expenses. The first thing I like to add to a cash flow analysis calculator, especially if you're a service business, is payroll. In most service businesses, payroll is, you know, we live and die by it. And a lot of times people like to have their payroll be, you know, maybe it's as much as they earn in income for that particular week, and maybe it's more. In this particular case, in this business, because they have lots of management and you're paying the owners out of payroll and things like that, the income each week is only expected to be a little less than $11,000, and the payroll is almost $17,000 with the taxes. So we know right away that even if we have no expenses that are going on the week that you're making payroll, you're going to have to start off with some money in the amount of the account. In this case, they're starting off with $6,500. Otherwise, this cash flow is going to be negative. If we only had, for example, if we only had a balance of 0 to begin with, we could see that when payroll comes through, they would have almost $6,000 in the hole already. So to set up, we're going to be checking to make sure that your dates are correct, that you're adding whatever income you're expecting by the end of that particular week, whatever the balance is currently. You can guess if you want to, but it's really better actually if you're going to fill this out for you to go and take a look at your actual bank accounts. Look and see what's really going to be happening. Half the reason why we get really confused about what's going on, or we're totally in the dark about what's going on with our cash flow in our business, is because we've become sort of unconscious. You know, a lot of people experience frustration when they start using this because they say, I don't know what's coming out when, I'm not sure what's going on. And that's just anxiety, because we know that we have so many things on automatic that we really haven't been paying attention. And it is really healthy for us to pay attention and say, you know, what is coming in on what day. So you're going to want to check your bank account and actually look at the real numbers and then put in when you anticipate. So, you know, it's amazing for a lot of businesses, they had never really looked at that to realize what day things are coming in and out. Another tricky thing that happens lately is that it used to be, a lot of things were purchased on subscription on credit cards. Okay, that's automatic. Maybe your advertising comes out automatically on a credit card, or maybe your dues and subscriptions come out on a credit card. But people oftentimes now have been switching that from a credit card to a debit card. Well, what's the difference there? Well, then it's coming out of your checking account on whatever day it's supposed to be coming out. And if it's an automatic thing, maybe it's an automatic payment that comes out on a specific day, or it might come out every 4 weeks or something like that. And now we have to pay attention, because the credit card, everything would just roll onto the credit card, and the credit card is due on a specific day. But on the debit card, if you're giving that out, it could be all over the map, right? So the idea is to just go through and load in, what expenses am I expecting this week? What expenses am I expecting next week? What expenses am I expecting the week after that? And that's how you're going to get started with that, okay? I had mentioned earlier, you'll notice in here that not only do I have expenses, but I have something here called cash reserve. Watch my other video on how to calculate how much cash reserve you should be moving over into your savings account. But there's a lot of things in your business where you actually need to be calculating a cash reserve. For example, what we were talking about with the 3 pays in a month, if you're a biweekly payer, or the 5 pays in a month, if you're a weekly payer. Those are the kinds of things that we want to save all year so that we have enough money in our savings account. So all we have to do is pull the money from the savings account when we have that additional pay. That's one reason we would have cash reserve. Another reason, let's say, for example, you've been assigned by the IRS to pay your payroll taxes quarterly because maybe your revenue isn't quite high, your payroll isn't quite high enough to need anything further. Well, that's kind of hard for a lot of small business owners because they don't have, they don't necessarily move the money over into savings right away. And so then when they're hit with that big bill, it's very impacting. So that would be something you would calculate into this cash reserve. If you have some big chunks coming up, then you would, big chunk payments, then you would want to calculate that. Another thing I usually recommend for business owners is that I'd like everybody to have at least one solid payroll period, a payroll, that's your starter fund of cash reserve in a savings account, just in case your business gets hit with some kind of natural disaster or some kind of strange change in the marketplace or something like that. You have some money left over. After you get that starter one, we actually like you to get a little bit more so that you eventually will have one full month's expenses in your savings account, so that you might be knocked around a little bit through to these little bumps and bruises, but you won't be knocked out. So that's something that we want you to do, but that's for another video. Okay, so let's say you've set this all up, you put everything in here, and again, we've got sample data here from somebody who's making about $47,000 a month. What does this cash flow analysis tell us? Well, it can tell us if you need to add money. Remember, I was telling you that right here, if we had started out with a zero balance and we knew that we were going to have income coming in of $10,920, we can see not only that we're going to need money, but we can see how much. If a lot of times business owners will be struggling financially and they'll say, oh, I'm just not going to make it. It feels like I'm treading water. I just put out one fire and then I get to the next. And I say, well, how much money would it take you to solve this problem? If you could borrow money from a family member, if you could, delay your own payroll long enough in order to come up with the money, if somehow you sold a vehicle, if wherever the money came from, if you got a loan, if you got an investor, how much money would it take to solve this problem? And a lot of times people don't know. I don't know how much money it would take. Well, this tells you. Basically, what it tells you is, at least on a cash flow basis, okay, it tells you in this particular week, we're going to be in the hole $6,000. Next week, we'd only be in the hole $3,000, but then the following week, we're going to be in the hole almost $9,000. And then the next week goes back down, it goes up and down and up and down, up and down, okay? So we're going to go back, and that's one thing that this will tell you. We'll go ahead and replace that money in there. But we can still see that even though we started out with this much money, we're still going to have a problem. Looking way over here, we're still going to have a problem. We'll address that at some point here. Okay, another thing that this cash flow report might tell you is that collections might be important. Maybe you've got some big bills that people have been lagging on. Maybe you have some credit card purchases that you haven't processed yet, and then they're going to have a 2 or 3 day delay before it's posted to your account. It may tell you, oh my goodness, we can't wait on that. We got to process all those credit cards by 2 o'clock so that it's actually done and they're posted into our account. We got to call those people that owe us money and see if we can offer them a cash discount to get them to pay us right now. It's going to let you know that, hey, right now we need to get some stuff done. And like what we're seeing here is down, later on in the month, we're actually going to have a cash flow problem that we can anticipate. Let's see, what else might it tell you? It might tell you when you see this cash flow crisis coming up, I might say, you know what? Oh, I see why we're going to have a cash flow crisis, because we are coming into January, which is going to have 3 pays in a month, and we aren't coming in with enough money. As the weeks go on, we keep getting further and further behind. That's the main reason. So what I could decide to do is I could decide to delay some payments. So I don't like to delay my cash reserve, but I could do that in a pinch if I had to, and then I would try to replace that a little bit later. Let's see if I'm going to take any owner draw. If I was going to take an owner draw at $2,000 right there, I could change that. So let's say, for example, we don't do the cash reserve and we don't do the owner draw. What does that do? Oh, well, let's see. If we delay this cash reserve payment also, look at that. Now we are almost going to make it. We're only going to be $2,400 short in this particular week, and then we actually make it up back here again. So it's possible we could delay Say, for example, we don't put this cash reserve in here, but instead here we take 4,500 out so that we don't completely skip it. See how you have control over it. Once you lay out what is going to be happening, let's think about the next 8-9 weeks. Let's think about how things are going to go. You can move these things around and plan exactly where every dollar is going to go without waiting until you get to that particular cash crunch. Okay, let's change those couple of bits there that we had. All right. Let's see, what else does this cash, I'm trying to think if there's something else that it do. How close should we watch this? Well, basically, once you've got it going, once you've got this going, you see how this is going to work. You're going to load everything in. You're going to be able to tell by watching this bottom line all the time exactly how your cash flow is going. What you should be doing from week to week after that is every single week you watch this, maybe even every single day, depending on how close your cash flow is. And let me just highlight the fact that you don't do this all the time. I mean, when your business is really flush and you are keeping a healthy cash reserve and you're not running right close to the line, you won't need to use this all the time because, you know, you don't need to be spending all your time watching the dollars in and dollars out of all the transactions if you have a buffer. But this is when you're in a real pinch, and this is why we would do it. So when you're in this pinch, you're going to watch this every week. What you're going to watch is, hey, every day I'm watching it. Is this income that I estimated is going to be for this particular week? Is it accurate? You know, I might even run my management software and see if it projects how much income I'm going to get for the week. I'm going to be keeping track of how much cash is coming in, who's paying, who isn't paying. I want to make sure that this number is at least what I thought it is, if not more, okay? If it's not what I thought it was, let's say that only $9,000 comes in. And I would just go ahead and change that because that's obviously going to affect all the other weeks that are coming on here, okay? Let's say we got lucky and it was actually $12,000 that came in. Okay, so that obviously affects it in a much more positive way. Okay, now if your income was going way up, if we wanted to get really technical, if you're a service business, your payroll obviously is going to be tied to your income. Because if all the dollars you make are because of the amount of labor that you've got out there, you might have to adjust. Your typical payroll week might be going up if you just got an income that went up, or your typical payroll might go down a little bit if your income was down a little bit. So, you know, I would anticipate that. And then one other clarifying thing, we say income here, but again, this is a cash flow report. So all we're really talking about is deposits. You might sell another $1,000, but that person is paying next month. They're not paying right now. So income's a little misleading here because actually it's the cash flow. We wouldn't count it this week because we're talking here only about counting the dollars that are coming in that particular week. Okay, so what you're going to be doing is you're going to be checking to see if that income is coming that's accurate. You're going to be going through and going, oh, was there any like bills I had to pay that I wasn't anticipating? I hadn't realized, you know, I forgot that I was going to a chamber meeting and that I had volunteered to be the sponsor, and so I had to write a check for $100, you know, to whatever program was going on. If you have the money, you know, and that's the expense, so what happened? You got to go ahead and adjust that. If you do that every week, when you come to each week, you're going to be on track. What does happen though is, let's say, for example, you didn't quite watch it very carefully. You thought, whoo, I'm in the clear, and I didn't pay any attention to it. But now I'm way down here and I'm looking at it, and it's, you know, the 3rd of January. It's the beginning of this week, it's the 4th of January. It's the beginning of this week. And I don't have $2,229 in here like I thought I was going to. So I have two options. If this is not on track with what I was expecting, I can either go back and update the incomes and the expenses, and this is probably the best way to do it, every week by week, make this exactly reflect what happened in those time periods, okay? Or let's say I can't do that. It's just too cumbersome. I've got 10 minutes to work on this, and it's just not going to work out. Not as good of a method, but you could go ahead and put in here an adjustment, and you can call it whatever you want. I would call it adjustment. My typing. Okay, I would call it adjustment. And let's say that we realize that we only have $1,229 in there. So that means 2,229 minus 1,229 is going to mean that we were off by $1,000. Actually, I might even be able to put a little formula in here, of course. Let's say that what we really had was, oops. Okay, so it's going to have an adjustment. It acts as if it's an actual new expense. And now this week's balance should be accurate as long as all the expenses that you're expecting to come in, and all the income that you're expecting to come in comes in. Let's see here. I was going to make another adjustment. Oh, right. Okay, so some people would ask, what would I do? Is this the same as like QuickBooks? There's a cash flow report in QuickBooks. Can I use this and use the one in there instead? Actually, the cash flow statement in QuickBooks is really useful. It just doesn't do this. Okay, the cash flow statement in QuickBooks will show you why, if you have a profit on your profit and loss, and yet you have a much lower number in your bank account, it will go through line by line and say, well, this much is attributed to accounts receivable. This much is because you haven't gotten your, MasterCard deposits yet. This one is because you purchased some assets that cost you money or cash flow, but the assets were not able to actually write off completely yet. It goes through line by line and explains the difference. Really, that statement of cash flow that is in QuickBooks shows you great what's happened in the past. But what this tool is for you to plan what's going to be happening in the future so that you can make sure that by the end of the time period, you have enough money to cover all these extra payrolls. And we kind of cheated here because I threw in a little formula to have each of the incomes equal so that I didn't have to enter it in each time. So obviously when I raised my income just that 1 week, it raised all of these. But, well, that could be our solution, right? Hey, if we just figure out a way to sell another $1,000 a week, do a promotion, get some more cash flow in there. If we figured out a way to do that, we can see that in the end, we ended up with a positive cash flow throughout, and we had enough to cover all of our bills. So there you have it. Hopefully that tip is really helpful, and enjoy.